So thank you for attending, I think, the final panel for this room and the best. As we have heard from every number of speakers, both today and previous, the importance of security cooperation, the importance of our partners, the importance of our allies, the importance of our friends is key in this era of competition and this information age. So I would like to start by asking all of those who are not Americans that are here from our partners, friends, and allies nations to please stand and be recognized. Please, ladies and gentlemen. What you do and what we do together is of immense importance. I'm Sinclair Harris. I'm your moderator for today, retired Navy guy and former Fourth Fleet commander. I have an incredible honor of being with a very distinguished panel. I am not going to read their bios. You can find those online or go on the app. And we will have questions. We ask that we focus on the non-media questions if possible and from our allies and partners and friends first. And Ms. Moore, Juanita White, Ms. White, where are you, Ms. Juanita White? There she is. She will help with the the media industry questions towards the end. So with that, it is my distinct honor to have as the first of our panelists to speak, Admiral Cubides, Chief of the Colombian Navy. Admiral, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you to the Navy League of the United States. Thank you for its president, the CEO, and also for you for this time for sharing something about Colombia and its Navy. Thank you to you, Admiral Sinclair, for this great opportunity. I want to start to say hi to our other speakers and also talking about Colombia. Colombia is a beautiful country located in the middle of Americas in a strategic position in the corner of South America with two oceans. We have a long coast in the Caribbean and also in the Pacific. In that sense, for attending all the Navy issues. Why I'm mentioning issues? Because Navy were created for defense, but in our case, Navy is attending not only defense and sovereignty issues, but also security and riverine. In that sense, Colombian Navy has to attend maritime, riverine, coastal, and also inland activities because Navy has assigned a land jurisdiction in the Caribbean and also in the Pacific where no any Army unit, and we're attending the security issues with brigades of Marines. Colombian Navy has different components: the naval component, the submarine component, also the Coast Guard component, and the Marine component, and the Naval Aviation component, and also the Special Forces component. With these branches or components, we have about 30,000 men and women who are part of the Navy and are there attending different kind of missions. It is important to mention that those missions are focused, as I mentioned, the defense and sovereignty, but also for the maritime and riverine integral security. So nowadays, Colombia Navy, Colombia is part of the non-allied NATO countries to U.S., but we also are a global partner for NATO. So we are connected with the war is a Navy with an important presence in the region due to we are totally connected with all the countries in the vicinity, working with Panama, working with Ecuador, also working with all the Central American countries. In that sense, it's a important Navy, and it is in terms of alliance. Colombia is the first ally to U.S. in the region. I would say the main ally in the region because we are working together since many years ago. We are close to the Panama Canal, a choke point, and we are ready to attend any security issue in relation to Panama Canal. So we are a Navy totally connected with U.S. and other countries. We have the French Navy close to the Caribbean, also the Netherlands Navy, and also with other navies who are going down to operate in the Caribbean, for example, the Canadian. So we are interoperating all the time. So we are a big Navy there working with all our allies, obviously with our main U.S. Navy and also U.S. Coast Guard and U.S. Marine Corps. So we are totally connected with the security of the region.
A key part of that. Thank you so much, sir. Next, I'm honored to have the Executive Director of the Defense Security Cooperation Agency, Mr. James Hirsch, who leads in the security cooperation globally. And again, your job is more challenging and more important now than ever before in this area of competition. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sinclair, and it's a pleasure to be here with my regional center colleagues and with the Admiral. As Sinclair said, I'm the director of the Defense Security Cooperation Agency. We're the agency that does foreign military sales, oversees the foreign military sales enterprise. We do humanitarian assistance. We do Title 10 or DoD authorized assistance to our partners and allies. In the last year, it's been an amazing experience to have been the director as we've increased our foreign military sales overseas to over $50 billion last year. And as we provided $30 billion of assistance to Ukraine in their fight against the terrible and inhumane invasion from the Russians. What's probably not so well known about DSCA is that we are the executive agent for the regional centers around the world. We are happy to be working with the regional centers because while there's security cooperation of material sorts, which we do in many places, in many ways we feel like the regional centers are actually doing intellectual security cooperation, talking to our allies and partners, sharing ideas, and building future leaders. And so we're very pleased to have this role as executive agent in which we supply some guidelines and some policies for them to follow, but mostly we provide support through budgets, through material, and through other things. It's been particularly helpful to or enjoyable to work with the regional centers, the three that are at Fort McNair, the Marshall Center in Garmisch, a horrible place, and the Asian Pacific Center in Honolulu, also a horrible place. But it's really, truly been a pleasure in the last year to help establish the Ted Stevens Center for Arctic Security Studies in Anchorage and to have been there with my friend Church Key when we actually opened the center last August. And Anchorage is a pretty nice place too, at least part of the year. so happy to have done that. On security cooperation writ larger, I want to talk a little bit about the National Defense Strategy, which really has been our basis for work in the last several months. The National Defense Strategy calls for something called integrated deterrence, which is all domain, all services, whole of government, with allies and partners, and with industry. And that is really a key role for security cooperation to play, to work with our allies and partners as well as with industry to forward the objectives of the National Defense Strategy. Most national defense strategies in the past have not talked as much about allies and partners as the current one does. This one really has placed a strong stress on that issue. And so when you talk about the assistance to Ukraine, for example, over 50 allies and partners have joined with us in providing assistance to the Ukrainians. And industry which brings us innovation, capable. They're the best defense industry in the world, and yet we all know that we are certainly currently facing some capability challenges, but we know that working together with industry, we can do great work and provide assistance to our allies and partners as well as our own military forces. And then to our workforce, from the sailors on the Navy ships around the world who are themselves diplomats for our country, to our workforces in the embassies and our workforce here in the United States, in Navy IPO, in the Undersecretary of the Air Force's Office for International Affairs, and in the Army Deputy Assistant Secretary for Defense Exports and Cooperation, and in the Coast Guard, since we have some of our Coast Guard friends here who work with us as well in the security cooperation world. It's our workforce that makes all this possible, and so we're very interested in making sure our workforce is as well trained as possible and that we can drive the entire security cooperation enterprise forward. So with all that, we feel we truly do have the advantage over our adversaries who may not agree with us on many of the objectives in the world. And we are now in a world of great power competition, so it's really important that we take these advantages and use them together. So with that, Sinclair, again, thanks. I'm happy to have further conversations and answer the questions.
Thank you, sir. Well, you've already mentioned the Ukraine, and I know we read about it every single day, which makes things that are always dangerous and important even more important. So we are very pleased and honored to have Dr. Andrew Mista. I had 4 years of German, and I still remember a little bit of it. The Dean of the College of International and Security Studies at the George C. Marshall European Center for Security Studies out of Garmisch. Thank you so much, Dr. Mista.
Thank you, sir, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. On behalf of Director Seguin, the entire Marshall Center team, it's an honor to be here and speak to you. In a time in Europe that is truly system transforming. The war in Ukraine is a system transforming war in terms of how power distribution in Europe changes, how it impacts what happens globally, and also how organizations like mine, the George C. Marshall European Center for Security Studies, can actually be a part of building relationships that our country needs to strengthen cooperation with allies and partners. Let me just give you a couple of words about the organization. We've been doing this for 30 years now. Actually, this year we're celebrating the 30th anniversary of the founding of the Marshall Center. I like to call it Marshall Center 1.0. It was created shortly after the coup in Moscow. Secretary of Defense said we need to assist our friends, our allies, future allies in Eastern Europe, post-communist states, in making the transition from communism to Western standards, civil-military relations, teaching foundational security elements. As the director here said, it's this intellectual educational glue that we bring to security cooperation with our allies. That mission changed on 9/11. We got a global mission, the CT component, to again reach out now on a global scale in the area of counterterrorism, countering organized crime and corruption, and increasingly cyber, to build a network of allies and partners. Let me put it up front. Our greatest outcomes are alumni. If you think of the fact that we've been doing this for 30 years, somebody who came into a course at the Marshall Center, let's say as a junior officer or civilian government equivalent, we've stayed with them, we've worked with them, we have invited them again to Garmisch, we've sent alumni teams out to work with them, bring them in as scholars, engage them in our research. This creates relationships that last a lifetime. We like to say this journey begins in Garmisch but lasts a lifetime. then since 2014, we've been retooling the organization for great power competition. So we're now focusing essentially on the strategic dimension of that in terms of how our curriculum has been revised. I just completed the curriculum review. We're looking at the faculty skill set to make sure it matches. And also we're looking at organizational optimization to make sure we can deliver on this Marshall Center 3.0, the new journey that we're entering upon. It may surprise you, but our biggest alumni cohort is Ukrainian. And some of the most senior Ukrainian military and government officials have gone through our programs, and we've stayed in touch with them. We also provided advice to Ukrainian parliamentarians. In the region as a whole, we reached out to priority countries such as Georgia, Moldova, obviously Ukraine, to assist them with whatever their needs might be, from writing national security strategy to organizing senior executive level seminars. This is about bringing allies and partners for the United States together. And the Marshall Center is unique. I'm so honored to have my colleagues here from sister centers. We're the only binational partnership. We're a German-American partnership. So we have both US academic faculty and US military faculty and German academic faculty and military faculty. We've got a German deputy director. We get guidance from both OSD policy and FMOD on the German side. So I live this partnership, this security cooperation every day when I come to the office. I've got a German deputy dean who works for me. We've got department chair personnel who are either German or American officers. And we also have on the faculty what we call local nationals, people that we hire from within the AOR. So we've got a Scot, an Albanian, a Hungarian, a partridge, and a pear tree. It's a kind of model United Nations, if you will. And the most important thing, we're bringing secondments from the flank, those guys who are close to the fight, to tell our participants, our course participants, what this war looks like from their perspective and what we can do jointly to cooperate and to assist our Ukrainian allies. So we were very fortunate, in addition to our Italian secondment, Swiss secondment, and Austrian secondment, to get now a Polish one-star naval officer and a Slovenian two-star army officer. We are about building relationships with our allies and partners, strengthening cooperation, and making sure that we travel together through this very dangerous era of global competition. Thank you, Singh.
Thank you, Doug. Next up is, quite frankly, one of my wingmen, close friends. We work together in the Imperial Staff. You may call it the Joint Staff. Major General Randy Church Key is a retired Air Force general. He is the senior advisor at the Arctic Security Affairs at the Ted Stevens Center for the Arctic Security Studies. And we've been talking about the Arctic from the very beginning today with the Commandant of the Coast Guard. Sir, over to you.
Admiral, thank you. In early January 2021, there was a National Defense Authorization Act that allowed the Secretary of Defense to consider establishing a regional center for the Arctic. With it was also an appropriation. On the 9th of June 21, Secretary Austin decided to go ahead and create and establish the Ted Stevens Center for Arctic Security Studies, the 6th DoD regional center, the first in more than 20 years, and with a location to be determined. On the 22nd of August 21, I was privileged to come aboard as employee number 1 in this new regional center, having retired to Anchorage, Alaska, and led an Arctic Research Center there for the previous 5 years after leaving active duty Air Force. Destination TBD did not necessarily make my wife very happy. But nonetheless, several months later, a decision was rendered through a very systemic process accomplished across the Department of Defense, enabled by the Defense Security Cooperation Agency, to establish this at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage, Alaska, which made my wife relatively happy with the destination finally known. This is, as a regional center, we're part of both supporting policy and security cooperation Each regional center, of course, is assigned to the Office of Secretary of Defense. We're aligned to a geographic regional combatant command. We're enabled by Mr. Hirsch and his incredible team of patriots at DSCA. Our center has been charged by the Office of Secretary of Defense to advance Arctic literacy, and to do so in a way that actually enables collaboration and cooperation on common problem sets of mutual interest with our Arctic allies and partners that, of course, include the Arctic nations. It also includes Arctic interested nations in North America, the European theater, and the Indo-Pacific. Because we are enabled at a research in a location that enables both research, engagement, and also the aspect of practitioner-focused education, as all the regional centers have, it provides an incredible opportunity for collaboration with our fellow regional centers. You have 3 that are located on the stage today with you. There's also 3 located at Fort McNair, but this is one regional center family. And ultimately, when you plug into one, you plug into the entire network. Each of us is focused on trying to advance both policy aspects through our 3 mission areas, but also realistically, the bread and butter of any regional center is enabling and creating an alumni network of like-minded allies and friends as we work to collectively provide America's asymmetric advantage, and that is from our adversaries or strategic competitors' vantage point, that of actually the growing a greater we, and the intellectual firepower that the regional centers bring to complement those areas of security cooperation that Director Hirsch had mentioned, provides that asymmetric advantage. Our center, of course, is a soft power complement for the Department of Defense and in the Arctic region, and ultimately complements the hard power investment the department's making. We are focused on creating both networks and solutions, again, complementary to what the other regional centers do for their respective regions. And then strategically for us, we're part of the components of integrated deterrence. The Stevens Center, of course, is prosecuting a building while doing campaign. It briefs relatively easily. Just putting it in practice is a little bit harder. But it is absolute thrill because we're working with America's allies and partners to include, which we believe tomorrow will be yet one more ally when Finland becomes formally accepted into the NATO alliance, as we understand. And building while doing for us allows us to adapt, to innovate, and to experiment. So in short, we're keeping the stone cutters away. And so they're not in the business of everything we do is, if you will, is focused on creating innovation as we proceed. And some things are going to work well, some things will not. But one thing is for certain. America has rising interest in the Arctic region. And we're honored to help contribute to the integrated deterrence of really protecting, defending, and securing our national interests in the Arctic region in complement to those of our allies and partners. What a joy it is to have this opportunity. My old shipmate, Sink, it's good to see you, and thank you for the work you do. You're like a task force security cooperation single human frame in what you do across the world from my vantage point. And my thanks to the organizers of this conference and for the kind participants who are listening in well before the half hour starts, but hopefully you're still focused with a little bit of coffee before we get the next networking portion underway. Admiral Harris, back to you.
Thank you. So, last on the stage, but first in our hearts, you've heard talk about China. We know about the struggles with Russia. Both are in the Pacific. We started with the Pacific, quite frankly, with Colombia as one of our Pacific partners. Now over to Captain Retired Wade Turvold, who represents the Daniel K. Inouye Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Admiral Harris. I bring you aloha, and I brought you the warm weather, too, starting tomorrow from Honolulu. I'm going to talk about the Indo-Pacific region for just a second because I think you've heard a lot about security cooperation, and then I'll tie it up with that. The Indo-Pacific region is the region to which the United States rebalanced 12 years ago. It contains most of the world's population, most of the world's maritime space, and the competition that comes with that. It's the world's economic engine. Half of world trade passes through the South China Sea alone. It contains all of the world's largest militaries, 5 or 6 of the 9 world's nuclear powers, depending on how you count, and 5 of 6 active U.S. treaty alliances. It also is where the world's challenges lie, and all but one of those we would characterize as maritime challenges. The Taiwan Strait, North Korea, the South China Sea, East China Sea, illegal fishing and other transnational crime, and of course, climate change. So, how does a regional center address and fit into that strategic landscape in the Indo-Pacific? Our unique mission is to maintain our relationship with allies, partners, and friends, and to advance U.S. interests in the region. We do so, as has already been articulated, through the use of soft power. We're the DoD's non-kinetic arm, and we're quite a bargain. Just our center alone, for about a third of the price of an F-18 every year, we employ 130 people, and we go and make alumni and build relationships through partner engagement, through executive education and workshops, all with the goal of building partner capacity. So our network alone of 14,000 plus alumni includes Admiral Kubitis on this panel. It also includes General Key sitting next to me, so you can see the kind of quality alumni that we produce, right? So to the title and theme of the panel about security relationships in the age of strategic competition. The national security strategy and national defense strategy are threat-based. There's no question. And so that's good for us. We need to talk about the challenges. We need to talk about the potential adversaries, there's no doubt. But our partners, the majority of our partners in region, see the world through the lens of partnership, not through the lens of threat. And it's there that regional centers, with a modest investment through our executive agent, the Defense Security Cooperation Agency, are able to advance U.S. interests, build partner capacity, and maintain the peace in the region. Thank you, Admiral Harris.
Thank you so much. So here's where we get interactive. Start heading over to the mic. We have them on both port and starboard side of me here. I ask that our partners and non-media, I love you media, but I really would like to get questions from the audience that don't get a chance to get to the mic to lead us off. But I would tell you, there are three things that I've taken away from our conversation. Number one is that the regional centers are connected. You touch one, you touch them all. It's like the Borg, but in a good way, all right? Number two, the importance of long-term relationships is so key. It's so key because it keeps us left of bang. And number three, that global security cooperation is the key in this competitive world. So with that, I'm going to switch the batting order a little bit. I'm going to go to you, Mr. Hurst, first, and I'm going to ask you to give us that history lesson in short time of security cooperation, how it's evolved in the past 15 to 20 years. And again, y'all can start heading to the mics now.
Yeah, so happy to do that. So the first thing I'd say is that I may be uniquely qualified to answer this question, since from 1991 to 1996, I was an action officer in the Defense Security Cooperation Agency, which had a whole different name at that time. But I think I'd say a couple of things. The first is that the size of the mission has changed. When I was there in the 90s, our annual sales were in the range of $12 billion a year, and that was a really good year. And the number of people in the organization that I run now was about 250 people. Today, as I said, we have $50 billion in sales for last year, and not counting the $30 billion that we've done for Ukraine. And we have approximately 1,100 to 1,200 people in the headquarters staff and 20,000 people in the security assistance enterprise. So the size is much, much larger. The second is that the number of missions that we do are actually much wider. So in the old days, it was essentially just foreign military sales and some IMET, some international military education and training. Today we do those, but we also do humanitarian assistance, we do demining assistance, we have schools that do international legal education, that do international capacity building for our international partners, and we have the executive agency responsibility for the regional centers, which we didn't have back then. So our list of missions is actually much larger. We also have a university today, the Defense Security Cooperation University, which we hope will continue to improve the training and education of our manpower across the enterprise. The third is that in those days, we were looking at a world in which we were preparing not for great power competition, because remember the wall had just fallen, but we were preparing for how to provide our allies and partners those things that they needed to invest in and take part in for what were more expeditionary operations. And today, part of the reason that our sales last year was so large is that we are in this world of great power competition, where our allies and partners are looking for very strong deterrent capabilities, which are somewhat different than what they were really focused on all that time ago. And then I guess the thing I would say finally is that 20 years ago, security cooperation was sort of an afterthought in the minds of most of our leaders, that having allies and partners as a strategic part of our defense strategy was not in most people's minds. It was certainly not in the center of our global combatant commanders planning for operations. And today it is. It's very clear through the Ukraine crisis that security cooperation is the premier and perhaps the primary and almost only tool that we have had to use other than sanctions in this crisis. And as we look at the Indo-Pacific, again, security cooperation is one of the principal tools that we have to try to defend the international order in the Indo-Pacific. So I would say those are the major ways in which things have changed.
Thank you so much. That was an excellent recap over a very complex series of decades. Really appreciate it. Now I'm going to go back to you, Admiral. And I'd ask you, and thank you so much, you provided a slide to talk from for everybody. Has the Colombian Navy identified the principal threats in the region, and how is managing interoperability with your allies, how does it contribute to regional security?
Thanks. First, being Colombia in the middle of Americas, we are conducting permanent analysis of the situation of the region, the threats that are coming to the region, to the Caribbean, to the Pacific. So we have an important staff for that important role in order to maintain the communication with our allies in the region. It is important to highlight that this analysis allow us to conduct operations with our allies in the region. For example, we are part of the UNITAS operation. We have been participating permanently with UNITAS. Also, we have a DESI operation. DESI is an important deselected submarine initiative with our submarines. We used to send a submarine to the north to operate with US. We also are sending people to RIMPAC. Some years ago, we sent a frigate to be part of the RIMPAC. So it's an excellent scenario for conducting interoperability activities with our allies as well. We also conduct Solidarex activities. It's an important operation for attending humanitarian and disaster issues there in the South America with Ecuador, with Peru, and also with US and Mexico. We conduct PASEX. And also, we also have sent a ship to the Mediterranean for operating with NATO units in the frame of Atalanta and Ocean Shields. So, as mentioned before, we are a NATO ally. a global NATO ally. So we are in permanent touch with NATO, training people and attending other activities related with the interoperability. Sorry. In that sense, we attend different threats also in the region, in the Caribbean and Pacific. We attend illegal migration. We also attend illegal fishing, the drug trafficking, smuggling of goods, and also crime related with the environment. We have special protected areas in the Pacific that we had to cover as well in the Caribbean. So we are attending in order to combat the illegally in terms of fishing. And also a problem with the climate, attending natural disaster. In that sense, for example, we went to Ecuador to help Ecuador after an earthquake. So we are totally connected in all these kinds of activities illegal. So I want to highlight this slide. In 2018, Colombia organized Orion Naval Campaign. The first Orion campaign was with 8 countries, and the purpose of this campaign is to combat all the drug trafficking at seas. In that sense, we started with 8, and we conduct this operation every 6 months during 45 days. So the last year we finished the number 10 with the participation of 40 countries and more than 100 different organisms and offices around the world in Europe, Africa, and America. So after 10 Orion campaigns since in 2018, we had seized about 800 tons of cocaine and other important number of tons of cannabis. See, so it means that we are working together, and Colombian Navy is leading this operation. Orion now is a well-known operation in the world, and we are now inviting countries in the Indo-Pacific. So in that sense, we want to organize and to lead this important activity in terms of interoperability in order to combat all the illegal activities there. The principal activities against the drug trafficking. So in that sense, we are a well-trained and skilled Navy with important priorities. And the first is to keep training our people in order to be in touch with other navies. By the way, we have a special program with U.S. Navy. It's a USCAR program. That program is focused to educate, to train the navies of the region. So we receive support from the U.S. Navy, and we send our instructors, Colombian instructors, to train and to educate the other navies in the region in terms of intelligence, marine issues, also naval issues as well. So other important priority is to keep participating in all the exercises I mentioned with other navies in the region or in other parts of the world as well. And one important priority is to keep our fleet, to modernize, to maintain, and to increase. For that sense, we have a shipyard, and now we are building our frigate. Maybe it's the second country in South America for building a frigate. So it's with the support of our government, a frigate and an OPV and also a logistics ship. It means that we are in a condition to increase our fleet in order to provide more units for operating with our allies, and also to keep combating the illegally at seas. In that sense, we are a Navy. We are celebrating 200 years of a Navy. We are commemorating an important naval battle conducted in 1823, led by our National Naval Hero Padilla. And to finish, we have a motto. We have a motto, the Navy, as all navies and all institutions. Our motto is, we protect the blue of our flag. We protect not only the seas, but also the rivers, due to we have an important role in the 15,000 rivers. But beyond the water of the seas and rivers, is the people who are living there. So we protect people. And we also do when we are interoperating with all our allies in order to protect the people of the region, the people of the world. So thank you for this time. Thank you for the opportunity for me and for you to know about Colombian Navy. Thank you, Admiral.
Truly a global Navy. So thank you, gentlemen. Please state where you're coming from, your name, and direct your question.
Hello, everybody. Thank you guys for taking the time out of your days to come speak to us. I'm Kieran Farrell from the F-35 Joint Program Office. Earlier, you mentioned that the amount of FMS sales has gone up in the last couple of years. And in the F-35, we have cooperative partners as well who do research hand in hand with the U.S. Men and women. Can you speak to some of the benefits of that type of cooperation over the long term, but also potentially some of the challenges in allowing access to special programs like that? Thank you.
That is a question that could take a lot longer to answer than I think we have time for, but I would simply say that the Joint Strike Fighter program is unique in that it is a major fighter program that had partner nations as true partners from the very beginning. And as the head of the JPO program office said in an earlier panel today, when there are meetings of the executive committee of the Joint Strike Fighter program, each of those partners actually has a vote, and the U.S. only has one. So that has some challenges to it, as different partners have different requirements for things. But it also provides us with a program that actually is an international product from the beginning. And so this allows us over time to have built a program that meets the needs of the many partners that we have, everybody from Japan to the UK, to Denmark, Norway, and the Netherlands and Italy. All of these countries have participated in the designing of the aircraft and in the negotiations with Lockheed Martin to a certain extent. And now we have FMS customers who are coming in and joining this program as well, several in the last year, which has contributed to that number of $50 billion in a big way. We need to make sure that while those FMS customers are not quite the same as the original JSF partners, that they also are brought into the community of JSF nations. And that's sometimes can be a little bit of a challenge, but I think we're doing a pretty good job at it. And I would hope that we'll have more JSF customers as we go forward. I'm not sure that totally answered your question, but I think a lot longer conversation might be necessary to dig down deeper. So,
Thank you so much. Next and final question.
Hi, thank you. My name is Joshua Geller, also with the F-35 program. My question is, with the increasing relationship between the U.S. and her allies, how do we reduce redundancy and overlap in our requirements between our partners and the U.S.? Thank you.
that's a really important question. And whether redundancy is necessarily a bad thing is also an important question. I think in today's world, where the United States cannot necessarily be everywhere all the time, and there are an increasing number of challenges, a certain amount of redundancy with our allies and partners is probably a good thing. But how can we make sure that we're all together meeting the requirements that we need is a really serious question. In NATO, there is a process for doing this. It's called capability targets in the NATO defense planning process. It's not perfect. It takes a long time. It only goes on every 4 to 5 years. But at least there is a process through which we run scenarios, we look at war plans, we develop requirements, and then those requirements are apportioned among allies. In the rest of the world, this is done much more bilaterally through conversations. And in some ways, if you follow what the Office of the Secretary of Defense does, we have bilateral defense consultations with almost all of our allies. They go by different names. And it's through those conversations and the similar joint staff talks that go on that we need to have an understanding with our allies and partners about what they believe they need for their defense and how that plays into our war plans or our theater campaign plans that can be the most useful. And so that process is going on all the time. Remember, our partners, our allies, are sovereign nations. We can't just tell them what we want them to have. It has to be a bilateral consultation. That provides challenges, but it also provides real opportunities for us to come to common understandings and better agreement and consensus once we have that understanding.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So the big flashing red hook is flashing at me. I got the hook right here, unless somebody from the Navy League can tell me I've got a little bit more time. I don't see anybody out there telling me I had any more time. But I want to do this. I want to end because I don't have friends that have flown all the way here from Hawaii and from Garmisch and from Alaska without getting a final word in. So starting with you, Wade, Mr. Captain Turvold, please, any closing remarks for our audience?
Yeah, I'll just end this way. Those were great questions. What this really is about is, again, us building and maintaining those long-term relationships. That's what regional centers do, and there's a reason why we do. I'll end with a quote from the German intelligence minister who said this about our potential adversaries in October. He said, "Russia is the storm, China is climate change." He wasn't talking about weather. And so it's important that the regional center in the Indo-Pacific region prepares for the coming storm. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Church?
Security is a very wide lane of perspective. There's many components within it. Climate is part of the security equation without question. So is economics. So is energy. So is things such as law enforcement and fisheries and wildlife management, security of subsistence-based lifestyles, and more. Each regional center, if you compare one to the other, is kind of comparing apples to broccoli. They're all very, very different. The reality, though, is as you look at each regional center and you want to plug into the network and the family, therein lies a lot of expertise, and if we don't have the expertise right at hand, we have networks to get at it. We're privileged to speak today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Church. And Dr. Mitzta.
Again, thank you. I live and breathe, because of where I'm located, what's going on in Ukraine every day. And just watching how NATO came together, politically unified, at a time when some statesmen in Europe even used expressions like NATO is brain dead, and I will not say who that person was, you all know that. That is truly one of the most important developments we see in Europe. And just understanding that without that alliance, that allied and partner network, we would not be able to deliver the aid we're delivering to Ukraine today. It takes what Poland is doing. It takes what every other country is doing. Not just bringing in the hardware, but also bringing in this political unity. That is something that I keep telling my faculty and staff is the greatest end state of what we're trying to do in security cooperation, is create a foundation of values and principles that we can share with our allied and partners, so when the chips are down, what we really see is that there is something larger, that there is a collective West, collective democracies. And I here agree with you completely. Russia is a revisionist power. It's trying to relitigate the post-Cold War settlement. I think China is more existential. It wants to change the rules and the principles on which the world is organized. Thank you for having me. It was an honor.
Thank you, sir. So I ask the audience to do two things. Number one, when you get the survey from the Navy League, tell them we needed another half an hour, for my panel. I told them that we needed more time because we had more good questions coming out here than we had time to get over. And number two, I ask the audience to help join me in thanking this great panel of experts and leaders.
Thank you.